You've been called smart your whole life, and somehow that's made everything harder. Not easier, harder. While everyone around you assumed that intelligence was the golden ticket, you were quietly drowning in overthinking, second-guessing, and a loneliness you couldn't quite name. You'd finish other people's sentences in your head. You'd see the flaw in the plan before anyone else did. And instead of feeling like a superpower, it just felt exhausting. Here's what nobody says out loud. Being extremely intelligent doesn't protect you from suffering. It amplifies it. And by the end of this video, you'll understand something about yourself that most people spend their entire lives never figuring out. Picture this. It's a Tuesday night. You're lying in bed at 1 a.m. and your brain will not stop. You're replaying a conversation from 3 days ago, analyzing the tone of a single word someone used, running 17 different interpretations of what they might have meant. Meanwhile, your phone says you have a 6 a.m. alarm. This isn't insomnia. This isn't anxiety, at least not in the clinical sense. This is what psychologists call hyperconnectivity. Your brain doesn't switch off because it was never designed to. It was designed to connect dots, to find patterns, to solve problems that haven't even become problems yet. And here's what nobody tells you about that feeling. The exhaustion, the isolation, the sense that your brain is both your greatest gift and your most relentless tormentor. It has a name. It has a cause. And it goes back much further than last Tuesday night. Now here's where it gets really interesting. A landmark study, published in the journal Psychological Science, found that people with higher cognitive ability actually experience greater emotional reactivity than their average intelligence counterparts. Translation: a smarter brain doesn't just think more, it feels more. It registers subtleties in tone, environment, and social dynamics that most people's brains simply filter out. Think about what that means. While someone else walks into a room and sees a party, you walk in and immediately clock who's uncomfortable, who's performing, who's about to leave their partner. Your brain is running background processes that other people don't even have installed. And there's a neuroscience layer to this. Research from the National Institute of Mental Health using brain imaging found that highly intelligent individuals show significantly more activity in the prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for complex thinking, planning, and emotional regulation, but also heightened amygdala sensitivity. The amygdala is your threat detection center, the alarm system. Translation: your brain is simultaneously more analytical and more emotionally wired. You're running a high-performance engine in a body that still gets tired, still gets scared, still needs connection. That's not a malfunction. That's the architecture. But where does this all begin? Because it didn't start last Tuesday night. It started decades ago. When you were 7 or 8 years old, you were probably already different, and you knew it, even if you couldn't name it. Maybe you preferred talking to adults over kids your own age. Maybe you asked questions in class that made your teacher pause a little too long. Maybe you finished your work early and spent the rest of the lesson staring out the window, building entire worlds in your head. And at some point, maybe by the time you were 10 or 11, the feedback started coming in. You're too sensitive. You overthink everything. Why can't you just relax? Adults who didn't know what to do with the intensity of your inner world told you, in 100 small ways, to turn it down. So, you learned to hide it. You learned to perform normalcy. You became fluent in 2 languages: the rich, complex inner world you lived in, and the simplified, socially acceptable version you presented to everyone else. In American schools through the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, giftedness was treated as an academic category, not an emotional identity. You might have been placed in advanced classes, told you were destined for great things, and then left completely alone to figure out why you still felt so profoundly out of place. The system celebrated your output. Nobody asked about your experience. And that gap, between being seen as capable and being truly understood, quietly became the wound that shaped everything. But wait, there's a darker side to this, and it's fascinating. Here's the paradox nobody prepares you for. The same intelligence that makes you exceptional also makes you your own worst enemy. Because your brain, the one that can hold 17 variables simultaneously, that anticipates problems before they arrive, that reads rooms and people with startling accuracy, that same brain applies all of that power inward, to you, relentlessly. And this explains why you hold yourself to standards that would be considered unreasonable for anyone else. It explains why you can forgive other people easily, but you lie awake cataloguing your own mistakes with the precision of a forensic analyst. It explains why compliments slide off you, but one piece of criticism lands like a stone in still water, and the ripples don't stop for days. It also explains something about your relationships. You've probably been told you're a lot, too intense, too in your head. You ask too many questions, you need too much depth. Casual small talk feels physically painful, not because you're antisocial, but because your brain experiences shallow interaction as almost meaningless. The cognitive equivalent of being asked to run a marathon while sitting still. And so you've spent years oscillating between craving deep connection and protecting yourself from the vulnerability it requires. Because the smarter you are, the better you can predict the 1,000 ways something could go wrong. That's not pessimism. That's pattern recognition, applied to your own heart. And this explains everything about your relationships with the world at large. Society has a very specific story about what intelligence is supposed to look like. It's supposed to be confident, productive, decisive. It's supposed to translate cleanly into success. The career, the ambition, the answers delivered without hesitation. While everyone else accepted that story, you've been living something messier and far more honest. You know that the more you understand, the more you realize how much you don't know. You know that certainty is often just a failure of imagination. You've seen enough angles on any given situation to know that the confident answer is almost always the incomplete one. And that's been misread your whole life as self-doubt, as indecision, as you not living up to your potential. But here's the thing. What looks like paralysis from the outside is actually something else entirely. It's intellectual honesty. It's the refusal to oversimplify a complex world. It's a brain that cares more about being accurate than being impressive. The world rewards performance. Extremely smart people are often more interested in truth. And that friction between what the world wants from you and what your nature actually is has cost you more than you probably realize. Jobs you didn't chase, relationships where you shrunk yourself down, rooms where you stayed quiet when you had the most to say. What I'm about to tell you in the next 60 seconds reframes everything. The truth is, extreme intelligence isn't the advantage everyone thinks it is. And it isn't the burden you've been quietly treating it as either. It's a different way of being human. Fully, painfully, beautifully human. The hypersensitivity, that's not weakness wearing a smart person's face. That's attunement, the same quality that makes great therapists, great artists, great leaders, great parents. The overthinking, that's not dysfunction. That's a brain doing exactly what it was built to do, searching for the most complete and honest version of reality it can find. The loneliness you felt, the sense that nobody quite sees the world the way you do, isn't evidence that something is wrong with you. It's evidence that you are rare. And rare things are often misunderstood long before they are recognized for what they actually are. So here you are, a Tuesday night, or maybe a Sunday morning. Maybe you're driving, or running, or sitting somewhere quiet, listening to this. And maybe for the first time in a long time, something feels slightly less heavy. Because you weren't broken. You were never broken. You were a complex instrument in a world that mostly wanted simple tools. And you did what any perceptive, sensitive, brilliant person would do. You adapted. You survived. You kept going, even when the going was completely invisible to everyone around you. The brain you were given is not your problem to overcome. It's your life to finally stop apologizing for. You were built to feel more, think more, see more. And yes, and that costs something. But it also means you're capable of understanding more, creating more, connecting more deeply than most people will ever experience when you let yourself. That's not a burden. That's an invitation. If this resonated with something you've never quite been able to explain about yourself, you'll want to watch this next.